Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with Jan Rose Kasmir, who is an iconic figure from the 1960s. We first connected a little over a year ago when a picture that was first taken on October 21st, 1967 came across my timeline, and Jan, you gave your contact information, and we reached out and we connected. I told you what I was going to be getting ready to do, selling all our stuff and getting into an RV with my wife and traveling around, and told you a little bit about my mom's story. And we immediately connected, talked for over an hour that first time, and then you took a couple trips to Costa Rica, and we've reconnected here. You've published a book, which we want to talk about a little bit, but really want to talk about the photo in the 1960s a little bit and some of the stuff you went through. So first of all, just thank you for joining me on the show today. I'm really excited. I know we rescheduled this a couple times, but here we are and talking about it. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's really a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So again, I'm a little bit younger than you. I wasn't born when that picture was taken. I was born just under 2 years after that, in July of 1969. But I did know about the picture. I didn't know a whole lot of the history. So as soon as I saw it come across my timeline and you talking about it, I was like, this is definitely somebody that I want to get to know. So first of all, tell me a little bit about you were 17 years old when the picture was taken. You're an activist. You were protesting the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. I guess, first of all, what was one of the things that made you want to get out there and protest the war in the first place?
Well, I think that part of my activism, I really attribute to my Judaism. The Eldridge Cleaver statement that if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem is the same as what we have in my religion, which is mitzvah, which is doing a good deed. And I felt so completely outraged by what I understood about the war. And I really felt that I needed to help my brothers and sisters in Vietnam because it just wasn't right that we were there killing them. And, we were intervening in a civil war. We had no business. That our government was lying to us. And I don't know how it is that we were so privy to what I thought everybody knew, the information. It was just like learning about Nixon's dirty tricks way before he was ever busted. And, but we knew what was going on with our government and the bombing and, the bombing of the collateral countries and just all of that. So I had a real sense of righteousness. I was not in a happy situation. I had been busted for 1 ounce of marijuana. I did 10 months at a state institution. I had just gotten out. I was living in a foster family, and I was not a happy camper, but I could hold on to becoming involved with activism as a way to feel good about myself and my life. And it's always been a very important part of who I am. It's not just what I have or any of those other things. It's what am I doing? What am I giving? I'm very much in that justifying my existence and justifying the gifts that I get by virtue of the fact that I'm serving. It has always been like that. It's just something that's been instilled in me from a very young age. So I actually went down to the march by myself, which meant I might be able to meet a guy. So I wore my best pink, my pink paisley shift, and I had on my boots, and I thought I was looking cool, and went down to join the revolution. And what blew my mind was the closer I got to the epicenter where the demonstration was going to start, I looked around me, and it was like I saw all these straight people going to gather. And that was mind-blowing. because I thought it was just us hippies that cared. And I saw nuns and priests and mommies with baby strollers and, you know, in fact, if anything, we were outnumbered. There was a lot more straight people than us hippies.
Wow.
So that was pretty shocking because there was over 100,000 people there.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you went to the protest by yourself. You're not with another group of kids.
No, I jumped on a DC Transit bus. I lived in Washington. So I hopped on a DC Transit bus, took it downtown to probably to like 17th and Constitution, and got off and walked to the Lincoln Memorial.
Wow. Yeah, I did not realize that part of the story. I just kind of assumed you were part of, 20, 30 people, 50 people who went to this.
No. In fact, the funny story involved, so the march was to go from the Lincoln Memorial to the Pentagon, which entailed marching over the 14th Street Bridge. Well, I had to gather myself up and I wanted to hook up with somebody. So I found this group that was marching along, they're holding a banner, Youth Against Fascism. Who's going to argue with that? They're saying, Viva Che, Viva Che. I didn't even know what a Che was, but I'm there, Viva Che, Viva Che, of course, Che Guevara. So later, I made an effort to hook up with this group to see, to go to one of their meetings. And I walk in and they're talking about killing Jews. It turned out it was a Palestinian group.
Wow.
So, and the fallout from that was for a long time, my picture was carried on a Palestinian website saying that I supported them. And I kept writing them, no, take it down, because I'm a Zionist and a Jew. So anyway, but I have since learned and loved Che Guevara. In fact, my photographer photographed him and knew him to be a very kind of lonely person, at least when he met him. So,
right. Wow. That is pretty funny. So once you got up to the point where, was there a moment when you grabbed this flower and, you wanted to,
no, it was all very organic. Somebody handed me that flower late in the day, and I didn't bring it with me or anything, and they just handed it to me. So I held on to it while I was demonstrating. And what happened was the National Guard lined up in front of us to keep us from advancing on the Pentagon. And at that time, this is before Kent State. So there's a picture of me like that going, what are you going to do, shoot me? I had total sense of invincibility. And, we asked the soldiers to join us, and they were sort of stonewalling us. I think they were afraid that they were going to get an order to shoot or something, because Marc, the photographer, Marc Riboud, as he observed it, he thought that he saw them shaking. And he also thought, gee, these guys are probably afraid of what's going to happen. But fortunately, nothing bad happened. But, I just couldn't engage them. I tried. I could not engage them. And then finally, at that moment, it really was a powerful moment because I had an epiphany. Up until that time, it was the war machine and the rhetoric, the baby killers and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, I focused on their eyes and their face. And I saw these were just young boys. This could have been my brother, my date. These were part of me. So if you look at my face closely, you'll see I'm very sad. In fact, the first time I saw it exhibited, I burst into tears because I recalled that sadness, because I realized they were just as much a victim of the whole war machine as anybody else, which is quite a revelation for a 17-year-old. I really saw above the obvious easy stuff. And I never abused a soldier. I really want to make that clear. I never, in fact, one time I stood up at a spiritual fellowship meeting where somebody, a Vietnam vet, stood up and said that he was abused. And I personally apologized for anybody who would have said something, because, you can't hate out of love, and I really forgave. I really got it that they were just doing their best. They were doing what was honorable for them. And so, I really forgave.
Wow. So you didn't know Marc prior to him taking that photo. So tell me about after he took the photo. Like, when did you even know there was a picture taken? Like,
Okay, so
what
maybe 20 years later, my father opens up a Magnum Photo magazine because he was really into photography, and there's his kid. He was taking a plane to Scotland and opens this magazine, and there I am. At that point, I wrote to Marc Riboud because there had been no connection with us. And I said, you know, gee, I know you probably don't care who I am, but I just wanted to tell you that I'm the girl that you photographed. And then it was dropped for, I don't know, until almost 2000. And around the millennium change, then all of a sudden there was all this interest by Life magazine and other places in who was she. And I think they found, well, they found my letter, and then they figured out, they called my, I think Life called my father, who gave them my number. And then, and that sort of opened the floodgates. And then I was able to connect with Marc finally, which was very special. He is a peace pilgrim. He was in the French Resistance. I mean, he's the real deal. And he's why the photograph is so magical and so karmic, and why people really are attracted to it. It's karmic energy. It's all that love. We're both peace pilgrims. It's real deal. It's not a photo op, even close to it. In fact, there's another picture that almost won a Pulitzer Prize. And I might be getting the name wrong. I think it's Bernie Brooklyn, but I won't swear by it. I think that was the photographer, but it's one where he's putting the flowers in the gun barrels. It was taken, I think, the same March. And it never had the same life and same exposure and same energy. And sadly, he did find fame, though. He became a glitter drag queen and revolutionized New York fashion, from what I understand. I can't think of his name, because I want to say Chameleon, but that isn't it. But his real name was George Harrison, and Harrison. And he died, unfortunately, not too long ago. But I feel like there's a karmic element to it because of, I mean, Marc was in the French Resistance. Marc went and met Ho Chi Minh. And in fact, my photo was why he was the only Western photographer who was invited into North Vietnam to photograph. When Marc met Ho Chi Minh, my photo was on his desk. And the story goes, he had a tear in his eye, and he said, of course you can come photograph. You're our brother. You took this picture. And that was his passport into North Vietnam.
Wow. Wow. So 20 years went by before you even knew the photograph was.
Absolutely. And it went, I don't know if you can use viral back in the 60s. It went all over the world at the time. But I was totally incognizant of it. I knew nothing about it.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about your journey from, that day, kind of leading up to, where we are today, where you're now an author of your second book, correct?
Right.
So
the first one that counts, because the other one is sort of a small attempt at being an author and just focused on the day. This one is comprehensive. And, I'll tell you, I think the short version is I was killing myself until I was 28. And then I was fortunate enough to turn my life around. I was very self-destructive. I was really lost. My sister died when I was 12. There I am going into puberty, and my family fell apart. She had a cerebral brain hemorrhage and died. And I was lost. And by the time I was 28, I had eating disorder and drug abuse and depression and suicidal behavior and just heap it on. And at 28, I finally, after being hospitalized most of my adult life, I finally hit a wall. And it was like a joke between me and God. I was like, okay, here's the deal. You get me better, and I will do something specifically for women alcoholics. And I got out of treatment, and I spent the next year plus driving 125 miles round trip to the women's federal prison in Shakopee, Minnesota, and bringing an AA group to the regular population and maximum security, and I kept that up for quite a while. I did about 10 years altogether, going into prisons and institutions, and using service, because again, that's how I know how to feel good about myself, if I'm giving away my gift. And I think the most important moment after that was the birth of my daughter at 41. We're late bloomers in my family. My mother got her doctorate in psychology at 52. I had my kid at 41. I got my massage degree at 36. I mean, we do everything in our own pace. And I'm still eyeballing a degree in rabbinical studies. So I may, I'm not giving up on becoming a rabbi completely at 70. But like I said, we're late bloomers. But the birth of my daughter was really what gave me love and hope and happiness in my life. And I've just been, it's kind of like the thing about you can eat an elephant one bite at a time. My life has just been putting each piece together, just each piece, and building for myself, and life necessarily keeps me humble.
Yeah, well, I think that might be one of the reasons why you and I initially, really kind of connected on that first phone call a little over a year ago, is that, I told you a little bit about my mom, and, she kind of reinvented herself later in her years as well. And, what Sandy and I are about to do is following in her footsteps, where, she went out on this journey in an old 67 Plymouth Valiant and took the back seat out of it and turned it into a bed and just went out and met people. But she also, got involved in drug and alcohol counseling. My stepfather, her second husband, was an alcoholic, and she decided to go back to school, in her late 40s, early 50s, to become an drug and alcohol counselor. And after she passed away, there were things that she did that we had no idea. Where she was the part of the Florida Attorney General's Rape Crisis Network, where she would be one of the first people called when a woman would come into the emergency room after they're raped or sexually assaulted, just to be their ear for them, just to talk to them and let them know that nothing they did caused this to happen to them, and just, be a shoulder to cry on and stuff like that. So I think when we first spoke, back in, April of last year, I think that's one of the things where we really kind of connected, is there's a definite connection of, you reminding me of my mother quite a bit, for sure. So what led to wanting to, you said your first attempt at the book was really just talking about the day. And then now this one here is really more about your journey and, being able to use your journey to help others. What made you want to tell that story?
Well, I feel like what gives value to my life is that it can serve other people. That's what makes it all worth going through, that it gives people things to identify with, and they can say, oh my God, she made it, I can make it. And I did a lot of AA groups and a lot of mentoring and a lot of sharing. And over the years, the gift of just being open and honest and sharing the gifts that you get out of life, it's so powerful. I used to go into these prisons, and my favorite part, of course, was getting out in one piece. When they open the doors and I'm gone, and they're staying there. But I had guys coming up to me after I would speak and say, "Oh, I really feel sorry for you." And I'm like, "Oh, well, it's okay. I'm good. I'm good." But everybody has their own story. Everybody has their own amount of pain, their own hell, and you can't quantify it. But by sharing honestly, it just serves in a way that nothing else can. Nothing else can. If people can identify and see that you climbed out of the hole, they say then to themselves, why can't I? And that's the biggest gift, when people can do something with their lives, when you can help people to make changes. That's so powerful. I mean, it really, that'll never get old.
Yeah.
And I have people who also come to me about my photo. And as it turns out, back in the 60s and 70s, unbeknownst to me, when Spanish freedom fighters were fighting Franco and fascism, my picture was a huge source of inspiration. In fact, in 2010, I was honored in Spain with a week of peace events. The final night was 3,000 people holding lit torches to create a human peace sign. And I'll send you a picture of this. It's real powerful stuff. I had people coming up to me with tears streaming down their faces because, you know, I was a real person, holding me, hugging me, and I'm still I still stay connected through Facebook with a number of these people. I mean, and honestly, I don't even feel worthy, because I've looked into what they suffered under Franco. Holy mackerel. There was one torturer called Billy the Kid who took strips of flesh. I mean, just, ugh. And the Spanish have their own story, because some of these, what happened was, at the end of all of this, the reconciliation was, well, look, we'll just say it's all good. We're not going to put any of the Franco's bad guys in jail, but we'll let all of your, you know, your dissidents out. And so we'll just have an amnesty. Well, these same son of a bitches, they're out there living their lives with money they made through Franco and all this stuff, with places named after torturers, murderers, mass graves. So that's still something that's still being reconciled in Spain. So when I really looked into the history of that, I didn't feel worthy. I really, I mean, yeah. But they cared, and it helped them.
Yeah, and isn't it, you hear a lot of times where people talk about there really is strength in being vulnerable. And, I know we're taught in society a lot of times to not show our vulnerability, and that's starting to break down a little bit more, because I think it is very important for us to be able to share our stories with each other and, help each other overcome and, share those stories of overcoming. So, I think there's definitely a lot of strength in being able to show your vulnerabilities. But was it difficult for you at times to kind of go back and pick those scabs, so to speak, of your past? And what
God, writing that book, I worked with somebody, and I'd get it so far, he'd help me with it, he'd send it back to me. I stuck it in a drawer. I didn't even want to read it. I started nightmaring worse than ever. I mean, it is so beyond painful. I mean, I'm a very in the moment person. I'm very zen, and I'm very accepting that things happen the way they happen, because they happened. No regrets, just keep moving. But that isn't to pretend it doesn't, bring a lot of pain, and it does. But one of the things I was in psychoanalysis for almost 20 years. And my Myers-Briggs would say to me that it's painstaking. This work is painstaking, that you have to take the pain. And that's how you get better. You face the pain. So, I just trust it all. I mean, I got better by trusting catharsis. So, with meetings and 12-step meetings and all this stuff. So that's not about to change after all these years. And if anything, I probably embarrassed myself. Certainly my daughter at times is like, oh God, mother. But, I have to be me. I can't be anybody else.
Yeah. So what do you have to say to those young kids out there today protesting, being one that, protested in the 60s? I mean,
I have a lot to say to them, and that the moment's impossible, but it's where you take it. Making that stand is important, and the longevity was important too. But now it's, it's going to be time to move on and make that all into something worthwhile, a path to something. One of the reasons I want to go to Vietnam is I want to be able to talk to the Black Lives Matters protesters and say, look, this was my impact on a society. I made a difference through protest. You can make a difference too, because I definitely validate, they're not letting them get away with George Floyd. They're making sure that these people are remembered and that justice is done and that changes are made to these police departments. And granted, I think that the changes right now are still a little superficial. A flag here, a memorial there, that the racism is so endemic that it's going to take a hell of a lot of work, especially with this president at the helm. He's such an out-and-out racist that, he really fosters a lot of that garbage. So, we really need a lot of help to move on. But I don't want them to lose hope. It was like when the Occupy movement started, that was very promising, but unfortunately they didn't keep it together and take it somewhere. So let's make this count. Let's, and it may be that as organized as they're going to get is to keep up the protest. Well, you have to do what you can do, but I don't want it to go away. I want systemic changes. How they happen, I'm not sure. I can do my little part, my little way, but,
Was there ever a time in the 60s where you lost hope?
Oh, I don't think I thought about it that much. I was mostly stoned. If I lost hope, I'd get high. No big deal. There wasn't that kind of angst, and then of course Johnson, stopped the war. So that was insane. That was monumental. But, my life wasn't centered around that. That was a part of who I was. And it was more of an activity than who I was. I am a protester. You see it demonstrated so many different ways in my life. Just follow my Facebook postings. I'm always protesting because if you're not part of the solution, it's really important to speak up whenever we can, even if it feels like it's small and stupid. We have to take a stand. Very important.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about how you want to go over to Vietnam. So I know you've just started a GoFundMe to try.
Not yet. I'm waiting for my daughter to start the GoFundMe so it doesn't look so egotistical. But if whoever, just stays in touch with my name, it'll probably be in the next couple of days. I'll light a fire under her tuchus to get it going. But it's taken shape. At first it was just me going to Vietnam. Then I connected with some vets and I went, holy mackerel, that would probably be such a healing for them, to go back and really, be able to touch the soil and, face up to their ghosts. Because I have a very good friend of mine over the years who was a Vietnam vet. And, he never talked about anything, made a short reference to some little girl's brains on his boots. I can't even imagine the horror stories. But you have to face your pain. You have to face your demons. Put them to rest.
Yeah, no doubt about that. No doubt about that. So we're just about out of time. Are there any last things you want to say about the book? I know it's available on Amazon. I'll put a link in the podcast here. But again, any last things you want to say before we get to our final question?
Well, the most important thing for me is to let people know how accessible I am. You can find me on Facebook and connect with me. It brings me total joy to connect with people and do whatever I can to really listen and hear them. I spent like a year helping homeless people or homeless women, and I'm so accessible. It really makes me feel good. So I think that's, the most important thing about who and what I am right now. And I'm looking forward to still making a difference. I really am.
That's awesome. So at the age of 70, you're not planning on slowing down, it sounds like.
In fact, I'm going to be that 90-something-year-old woman chaining herself to a nuclear reactor in protest.
Yeah,
I will always be a thorn in the side, I promise.
I'm pretty sure you and my mother would have been pretty good friends.
I'm sure.
Week before she passed away, she was on the roof of a friend's house, putting on her roof, and I was at the age of 63. So she was out there not slowing down, and then a week later had a massive heart attack and left us. So yes, I can definitely relate to that.
I'm sure she's here, dear.
Oh yeah, she is. There's no doubt about it.
I'm sure she's digging it.
Yeah. So, as I told you, I always ask my
dog's alert to spirits, and they're like, they're getting excited. So I'm sure she's kind of touched down for a moment.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, as I told you, I always ask my guests one final question, and it's based on the opening lyrics of Michael Franti's song "Gloria," which is, "When many little people in many little places do many little things, and the whole world changes." So we kind of talked about it throughout the whole podcast, the little things that you've done. But if there's one thing that you think that you've done to help make the world a better place, what would you say it is?
Well, I think that it's hard to isolate it to a moment, to an action or a moment, because my life has been so confluent. But I would think just my staying in touch with my heart and being available, rather than a moment, more like an attitude and a commitment. I think that says it better about me.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, Jan, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And like I said, I know you've been going through some health issues, so we had to reschedule a couple times. And I'm really glad we got a chance to have this conversation. And I told you when we talked on the phone, don't be surprised if you get a text that we're in the Hilton Head area and we end up doing another podcast sitting outside the RV or in the RV, depending on where we're at with the virus and how close we can get to each other and that sort of stuff.
You're more than welcome. You're more than
definitely looking forward to it, and good luck with the book. Like I said, I'll put a link up and have people be able to go to Amazon with the book, and I'll put your email out there for them as well, so they can reach out and connect with you.
I do want to say just one little quick thing. I do hope people follow up and contribute to the idea of this documentary coming through. I want to use the GoFundMe to create a documentary, because Vietnam veterans have suffered so many nightmares, and I think that this could be something powerful. This could be a real tool. So I think making this happen would be amazing.
Yeah, we'll definitely help push that for sure. So again, thank you so much for joining me, and folks out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts, my blog at danclouser.com. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Peace out.